Welcome to the Brothers in Crime podcast.
We are brothers.
We talk about true crime.
We don't take ourselves too seriously.
And you shouldn't either. All right, before we dive into today's case, just want to give a shout out to the people who have been with us for a while and left us some nice quality reviews on Apple Podcasts. If you listen on Apple, would you take a moment and leave us a rating and a review? It really does help us out a lot. And today we want to shout out a couple of folks.
Yeah, don't ghost us. Be a good listener like P. Archie.
And Allie Ray. Thank you guys for your reviews, for the ratings, and for listening. We appreciate it. Leave us a review, and maybe we'll shout you out on one of our upcoming episodes. All right, well, that was a fun thing, and for probably the next however many minutes this episode is, there's not going to be a whole lot of fun things. This one is heavy. There's a lot. This case, I think, checks all the true crime, icky, nasty boxes, and also it is a case involving some other brothers in crime. We haven't done that in a while, and this one was too long to make a short, so it is a full-blown brothers in crime, other brothers episode. Just to give you some upfront what you're in for, this case is going to culminate in over 100 felony counts going to trial. I think this is about as pure evil as it gets, and we probably haven't talked about anybody this bad. And I think these guys are worse than since we did the Bondurant Bros when it comes to evil brothers. So,
wow. So when you say like 100 felony counts, you mean they actually did at least 100 felonies, or is this like what you lawyers do where they did 4 things and they get charged 25 different ways for each?
That's a fair question. In this instance, I think we're legit. These guys are. Well, you know what? I'll let you decide for yourself. But before we get there, before I talk about anything in this case, I think you need to give the fine folks in listener land all the trigger warnings. I got a list of them.
You just did that.
I mean, but you usually do it, and it's better when you do it. So, I got a list of what all you might hear about.
Trigger warnings: violence, murder, sexual assault, child abuse. If it's triggering, this case probably has it. So turn your snowflake radio off or switch channels.
Yeah, it's not going to be pretty. Now, before we get into all the bad stuff, we'd be remiss if we didn't spend a little bit of time talking about the victims in this case and some of the people.
All 100 of them?
Well, there's not 100. Hey, you can commit 100 felonies, maybe against one person. I don't know. It's possible. Anyway, so first up, I want to talk about a fella named Andrew. I'm not going to go with last names. This guy's still alive, so I don't want to do that. So we'll just go with Andrew. At the time that the crime against him occurred, he was 23 years old. He's about 6 feet tall and a baseball player. My understanding, I think at that time he was also coaching, and I think he was coaching at Newman University in Wichita, Kansas. That's where we're going to be today. We are in Kansas. So,
okay.
Dorothy, put your red slippers back on. This guy, basically talked about how he loved baseball and all that kind of stuff. To me, you think like Midwestern All-American baseball dude, that's Andrew. The next victim in this crime spree that we're going to be talking about was a lady named Ann Walenta. She was 55 and was a cellist and a librarian with the Wichita Symphony Orchestra. And I didn't know what that was, but thankfully to some good writing and reporting, which we'll include in the show notes, as the orchestra librarian, she was responsible for ordering and keeping track of its music. So, somebody's got to do it, right?
I thought you were confused, but who knew?
I mean, it sounds confusing, but that's the deal. So apparently classical music, that was her jam. She really loved that. She had a husband, a couple of grown children, and she also was part of a group that taught classical music to like young African Americans, apparently. So it's pretty neat. It seemed like she really was passionate about music, teaching it, sharing it, and just enjoying it. Next, I want to talk about a 25-year-old school teacher named Holly. She had you'll appreciate this, she had a schnauzer named Nikki. It was her pet dog, and I don't want to get into too much more details about her other than she had been in a relationship for quite some time with a guy named Jason Belfort, who's 26, so he was just a year older. He was a science teacher at Augusta High School, and he also coached the boys' JV basketball team. Apparently, he was kind of a popular teacher. The kids liked him, people liked him, And what Holly didn't know was that Jason, they had been dating for a long time. And to the point, friends were starting to kind of give him a hard time about, like, dude, you ever going to propose to her? Like, what's the deal? And so she had no idea, but he had, about a week before the events that we're going to talk about, he'd went out and got an engagement ring and had sort of hidden it in this popcorn tin and planned to propose to her in the upcoming weeks. And when he went and bought the ring, this is back, we're in the Y2K days. So the internet, it was a thing, but it wasn't what it is today. And he had bought a book on how to propose. Did you ever buy a book on how to propose?
Oh, good Lord, no. Somebody should write a book on how not to and why not to.
Gosh. All right. So that's Jason. So then Jason he was living in a triplex with two friends of his, a guy named Brad Haka and another guy named Aaron Sander. So Haka worked for the Koch Industries, which is like the petroleum chemical, they run the world, those rich people, whatever.
Oh, wait. So Koch Industries is a company name? It's not in the Koch industry?
Yeah, it's not what you're thinking of.
Okay.
It's Koch.
Ah, all right.
And maybe it's Koch, I don't know. I'm Koch. Listen, you guys know how I am with pronouncing stuff. So, shout us out and let us know how you think it's pronounced. And if you work there and you know how it's pronounced, we'd love to hear from you. Anyway, so Brad was, doing really well there. I think he'd had a bunch of promotions. People kind of noted that, he had a great smile and a good sense of humor, which, as a guy who's fairly ugly with a decent sense of humor, that's gotten me pretty far in life, so I can understand that. Aaron, his buddy, this other guy that they lived with, he was a devout Roman Catholic and had recently made the decision that he was going to go off and become a priest. And I don't know exactly what that entails, but my understanding is it entails, a decent amount of work and stuff that you got to do. And part of that is, at least at this point in history, I don't know if it's still this way, you have to be, you can't be dating people and stuff like that. So his former girlfriend, Heather Muller, and he had just recently broken up so that he could pursue this priesthood thing, but they were on very good terms. They were still friends. She was understanding and supportive, and in fact, she was actually considering whether to go become a nun because she also shared the same faith and was kind of drawn that direction too. So, interesting story there.
School teacher gonna be a nun?
You're confusing Holly and Heather.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
So this is a different H name. I know that can be. Took me a little while to wrap my mind around too. But yeah, so that's that. So basically, you've got this group of young folks, right? They're all in their kind of like mid-20s. And I know you hate the show Friends, but it kind of reminds me of that in a way, because it's sort of like they're all just, like these random normal people who, have this. They're kind of sharing a place. They're hanging out together. They're living life together, and they're kind of in this really exciting, seems like time of their life. They also, I've seen in writing that they're described as salt of the earth kind of people. Just generally seem like great folks. Everybody that I just told you about, I couldn't. Nobody says anything bad about them. So,
okay, cool.
Now, this is where things take a turn. Do you want me to tell you about the dirtbags or just get into what they did? I was thinking about just getting into what they did, and then we'll talk about them a little bit later.
I guess, yeah. I don't know if I want to hear what they did.
That's fair. All right, so to set the scene, it's December, the year is 2000, and we are in Wichita, Kansas. And in case you haven't figured it out yet, this case, what happened, this crime spree, is often referred to as the Wichita Massacre. And there's a court case that deals with some of the things that happened here. And frankly, it's so well written, and the facts that underlie this incident are so well articulated. I'm going to do a fair bit of plagiarizing. We'll have the opinion in the show notes, and it's it's a court opinion, so it's not like not like we can't plagiarize it. So I'm going to borrow from it. I'm going to be reading a lot from that because it's just really well done. So bear with us. I won't just be reading off piece of paper, though, so don't think that's... And Bob will still... He'll do Bob.
You can count on it.
I was going to say, you quit watching your Alec Baldwin trial and get in here with me. Okay, so it's December 2000, and we've got brothers Reginald and Jonathan Carr. And these dudes, they hit the road for Wichita from Dodge, like Dodge City.
Like, get the hell out of Dodge, Dodge?
That's the one. And so they decide that they're going to go to Wichita because that's where all the rich people are. This is what they believe. And so on the night of December 7th, they decide that they're going to carjack Andrew, the guy I told you about earlier.
Okay.
So the baseball player. So they go, they hold a gun to his head, they force him to make cash withdrawals at various ATMs. And I've watched some of his testimony from the trial in this case. He basically reached a point where he decided he needed to pray and felt like he was probably going to die. And he said that, in his prayer, he said, God, if it's my time, like, please just let me die quickly. And when he recounted this incident, he became very emotional, obviously, on the stand and really kind of fell apart a little bit, just thinking about what he had been through. For whatever reason, the Carr brothers, they carjacked him. They had him make all these cash withdrawals. They had a gun to his head. But they didn't kill him. They let him go. And so he was able to testify later. And that's how we know what he was thinking and feeling.
What a turn of events for that dude.
Particularly when you're about to hear how this turned out for everybody else that I told you about. So fast forward from December 7th to December 11th, a whopping 4 days. And the brothers followed Linda Walenta, remember the cellist from the symphony. They follow her home from orchestra practice. Remember, she's 55. One of them approached her vehicle and said he needed help as part of a ruse. She rolled down her window and then he pointed a gun at her head. So she decides, fast-thinking lady that she is, that she's going to whip it into reverse and try to get out, which, frankly, I think that's something I would try to do.
Right.
He shot her 3 times, went back to his brother's car, and fled the scene. But one of the gunshots actually severed her spine, and unfortunately, she died about a month later as a result of her injuries from the shooting.
Damn, that's horrible.
Yeah. Hold on to your britches. So we go 3 days after that, December 14th. So we've covered the span of exactly 1 week from when this started with Andrew. And on the night of December 14th, the brothers, they busted into the Friends triplex, which is where we've got Jason, Brad, and Aaron, right? That's their triplex. That's where they live. And then Jason's girlfriend, Holly. And then Heather, who had been dating, I got it all mixed up now, had been dating the guy who decided to join the priesthood, and now she's thinking about it none. So they're all there. They're all in the house. It's nighttime. The 2 brothers are armed with handguns and a golf club. They force all 5 of these young folks into Jason's bedroom. They have them stripped naked, and then they order them into the bedroom closet. So now they're all in the bedroom closet, naked together.
Butt naked in the closet. What in the hell?
It only gets worse. Now, they're telling them, hey, look, this is a robbery. We're just here to rob you. And we've got these guns. They're waving the guns around. They're threatening them and stuff. These victims are terrified. Like it's nighttime. You think, I can't imagine what you're thinking. But these guys are, we're not going to shoot you. We're not going to kill you if you do what we say. If you give us your money, we're just here for your money, whatever. But then it becomes clear pretty quickly, like, they're not just there for the money. But I'm sure these people are hoping, well, they're going to do this weird, awful stuff. They're going to take our stuff and our money, and then they're going to leave us alone. So anyway, they end up, and this part, it's kind of graphic, and so if you want to fast forward a good bit, I wouldn't blame you. So they end up, remember, they've got the 5 of them in the closet, they're all naked, and then they start taking them out sort of in groups or in weird whatever. So they take Holly and Heather from the bedroom, and they basically demand that these 2 women are going to perform oral sex and do all sorts of sexual things to each other while the brothers watch and tell them what to do. And again, we come back to this whole, like, you and I wouldn't share a cup or a toilet seat, but these guys are, like, into this weird, like,
disgusting,
watch and make people do things, and all of it is so confusing, and I don't get it. So then they force each of the men to have sex with Holly and then with Heather. And they tell the guys that they're going to shoot them if they can't have sex with the women. And the guys, as you can imagine, under these circumstances, are having some difficulty with that because,
right?
Like, I think, I mean,
gun pointed to you. There's people watching. These are your friends,
right? Like, and some of them, right? They're in relationships. Some of them aren't. The one guy, he wants to go be a priest. He's broken up with his girlfriend, so it's a whole mess, right? And so they're trying, the friends, they're just trying to, like, survive this, really. And so through this ordeal, they're going to try to figure out ways to, like, just get through it and not die. That's really what they're trying to do. Now, Jonathan Carr, that's one of the brothers, at one point he snatches Holly from the closet and then ordered her to do things to herself. And while this is happening, he puts the gun down on the floor, kind of between her knees, and then he proceeds to rape her. And later on, some folks would, and this honestly pisses me off, so you can be outraged. They kind of question, oh, well, he put the gun on the floor. Like, why don't you pick it up and do something? And listen, like,
right.
That's ridiculous. But in response to this, which she shouldn't have had to respond to in the first place, but in response to this, she notes that neither she or her friends, none of them, they didn't own any guns. There weren't any weapons in the house. And she didn't really know how to use a gun because she mentioned that when this happened, she actually considered, like, maybe I could pick it up, but it was, well, I don't know what to do with it.
Right.
And so, frankly, if you don't know how to use a gun,
and you try and take this asshole's gun, you're going to just get yourself killed or beaten.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. No, I mean, still, like, not everybody can be Heather with the rake.
And I knew you'd go there.
That was an exceptional example.
She's one of a kind.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
But and the reason that we're in such awe about her is because what she did is not just what you expect someone to do. It's the amazing combination of her quick thinking and the good Lord's watching over her that made that all work.
Well, yeah, because I think, I don't know the statistics, but so many times, like, you try to do that and it would end up failing. Like you said, you'd end up getting yourself killed. If you tried to, right. I mean, and honestly, some of the best training that I've had in, like, active shooter training and that kind of stuff has been, at the end of the day, like, we can give you tips and we can tell you how things work and we can tell you this and tell you that. But when the rubber meets the road, you're the one who has to decide what you're comfortable with and what you're capable of.
Right.
So for each person, that's going to look a little bit different. All right. Anyway, back to this. So Jonathan, he rapes Holly, then he rapes Heather. Reginald takes Brad, Jason, Holly, and Aaron one by one to various ATMs to withdraw cash. So essentially, one at a time, one brother takes a person out and makes them stay naked. And remember, it's December, it's Kansas, there's snow on the ground, it's freezing cold. He keeps them in the car, but he goes and he makes these cash withdrawals with their debit cards because they're like, okay, who's got debit cards? That's it. We're gonna go get your money. And continues this whole time. They're telling them, if you do what we say, if you comply, we're not going to kill you. We just want your money. We just want your stuff. So as the victims, though, go out to the ATMs and they come back, it's not like this torture has ended at the house. There's still just this ongoing sexual sadist torture marathon that is awful.
Yeah, nastiness.
I mean, at one point in the facts in this opinion, it says that Holly actually had urinated in the closet because she was just so scared. And I mean, I can't even imagine what these people went through.
Yeah.
Now, Jonathan Carr, the one brother, remember I mentioned that Jason, this is Holly's boyfriend, had purchased an engagement ring. Well, at one point, as they're kind of trying to look through the house for valuables, because, everybody in Wichita is rich, including these school teachers and whatever, they find this hidden engagement ring. And so that's how Holly finds out that Jason intended to propose to her.
Oh, Lord.
So Jonathan points his gun at Jason and had Jason basically say what it was and why it was there while Holly was nearby in the closet. And like I said, that's the circumstances she found out. So then Reginald takes Holly from the closet, said, well, I'm not going to shoot you yet. And then he raped her on the dining room floor while boxes of Christmas decorations were around them. There's a part in the opinion where it gets very graphic and very detailed about what he did to her, and frankly, I'm just not going to read it. But I will tell you that I don't know how, it's worse than what I'm saying. If you can trust me that the things that he did to her were just horrible, absolutely horrible.
Yeah, I've heard enough.
So just suffice it to say that in addition to all of this nastiness, these rapes and assaults continue on until we get to about 2 a.m. This is 3 hours after the mayhem began, as the court describes it. And the brothers decided it was time to leave the house. So they try to put all 5 of the victims in the trunk of Aaron's Honda Civic. You ever try to put 5 people in the trunk of a Civic?
No, I wouldn't admit it if I had, but I can tell you that's tight.
I'm sorry. I'm laughing because of the look on Bob's face when I said that. You can't see it, but
there's a reason mafia dudes don't drive Honda Civics.
Right. So, shocker, they find that all of them won't fit, and so they put the 3 men into the trunk, which honestly, I'm shocked. The fact that they fit 3 dudes in a trunk of this Civic it's like sad, scary, impressive, terrifying, all the things. There had to not be a whole lot of room left for air. At that point, then, they directed Heather to the front of the car, and Holly got in Jason's pickup truck, which was being driven by Reginald. So they're taking these 2 cars out. Then they go out to this snow-covered soccer field. They instruct Jason and Brad, who are still completely butt naked, and Aaron to kneel in the snow. Holly cried, "Oh my God, they're going to shoot us." Holly and Heather were then ordered to kneel in the snow. Holly went to Jason's side, Heather to Aaron's. So they've kind of lined up with their, respective close ones. Holly heard the first shot, heard Aaron plead with the brothers not to shoot, heard the second, heard the screams, heard the third shot and the fourth. And then she felt the blow of the 5th shot to the back of her head, but remained kneeling. One of the brothers kicked her so that she'd fall face first into the snow, and then ran her over in the pickup truck.
Oh, jeez, oh, flip.
But she survived because she had put a hair clip in her hair that night, and it had deflected the bullet. So she still was struck, but it didn't penetrate or didn't do as much damage as it might have done had she not had this hair clip in her hair in the back of her head.
I think I'd call that a lucky hair clip.
So she has a sweater on because she was not butt naked like the guys were. And she runs over to Jason, her now maybe fiance, in the worst proposal that could have ever happened in the history of proposals. And she takes it off to this point now. She's completely naked. And she tries to wrap it around his head to stop the bleeding that's coming from his eye.
Yikes.
Then she went to her other friends, Brad and then Aaron and then Heather, realizing essentially that they're all dead and that there's nothing she can do to save them. She is in the middle of this field. It is December. It's 2, almost 3 o'clock in the morning. It's dark out. It's snowy, and she has no clothes on. She has been shot in the back of the head, run over by a pickup truck after hours of being literally tortured by these 2 brothers. So what does she do? She starts walking, and she manages in the snow, in the cold, to go until she sees lights in the distance. She sees Christmas lights. And she, after everything she's been through, her vision, I don't think, is quite what it was before this evening happened. But she's going toward these Christmas lights. She has to traverse a barbed wire fence naked on her way to get to these Christmas lights. And she eventually makes it. She ends up between where she was shot and the house that she gets to with the Christmas light. Naked, with her skull shattered, with no shoes, through the snow. It's over a mile. And every time a car passed by on the road, she was afraid that it could have been the brothers that were returning. And so she would lay down in the snow and try to hide so that whatever car was going by, if it was them, they wouldn't see her.
Right? I mean, because the worst way this could end, I would think, is if it actually was them and they, Yeah.
Yeah. So she finally makes it to the house with the Christmas lights, and she rings the doorbell. She knocks on the door. A man opened the door, and she relayed as quickly as she could what had happened. She's telling him what had happened, so in case she dies, he'll know what happened and can tell somebody. He calls 911 and he's telling the 911 dispatcher about what's going on, and she ends up basically saying, I need to know, like, give me the phone, I want to tell them. And so she's relaying everything she knows about these guys, about what happened, about what they did, about what they looked like to the dispatcher, so that if she doesn't make it, hopefully at least they'll be caught.
That's incredible.
But she didn't die. She lived. And she retold this horrific, hard to read, hard to listen to, even worse to imagine, play-by-play of what happened that night to a jury during the brothers' trial. Investigators, and you remember how I told you about the dog named Nicky?
Yeah.
So investigators testified that the brothers returned to the triplex after leaving the 5 friends for dead in the field, where they went back and they took all the valuables and just kind of ransacked the place. And for good measure, as the court said, they beat Holly's dog, Nicky, to death with a golf club.
What sickos. That's a capital murder right there.
Everything else I said, and you wait for that.
You beat a dog to death with a golf club?
I mean, I think a lot of the things that I said earlier...
All those things are disturbing and disgusting and immoral and a whole bunch of other horrible words, and those guys should be hung up by their nuts and beat with a spiked ball. But you go back after you've done all this and beat a dog with a golf club?
Yeah.
Psychopaths.
That's pretty bad. I think a spiked ball is called a mace, right?
Got me.
Okay. All right. Anyway, so the state charged each of the brothers with more than 50 counts, including murder, rape, sodomy, kidnapping, burglary, and robbery. The jury returned separate guilty verdicts, convicting Reginald of 1 count of kidnapping, aggravated robbery, aggravated battery, and criminal damage to property for the Andrews carjacking. 1 count of first-degree felony murder for the Walenta shooting. And then Jonathan was acquitted of all counts related to Andrews carjacking, but convicted of first-degree felony murder for the Walenta shooting. For the murders involving this group of friends at the triplex, the jury convicted each brother of 4 counts of capital murder, 1 count of attempted first-degree murder, 5 counts of aggravated kidnapping, 9 counts of aggravated robbery, 20 counts of rape or attempted rape, 3 counts of aggravated criminal sodomy, 1 count each of aggravated burglary and burglary, 1 count of theft, and 1 count of cruelty to animals. So do you think that's the made-up, over-exaggerated version, or is that the, like, these guys are...
No, I think they undercharged it.
Yeah, I mean, really, I don't disagree.
Yeah, no, I'm being facetious there. That's legit for what was described as happening here.
Yeah, the jury also convicted Reginald of 3 counts of unlawful possession of a firearm. I missed that one, sorry. So the state also sought the death penalty for each of the 4 murders of the friends who died in the field.
Death is too good for this bag of shit, brothers.
I don't disagree with you at all. The brothers were sentenced together in a combined sentencing hearing. The state relied on the guilt phase evidence, including Holly's 2 days of testimony. So just stop there for a second.
So they've already convicted.
Well, yeah, but I want to just stop here for a second. So Holly,
yeah,
this same woman who found out that her longtime boyfriend was going to propose to her while they were held at gunpoint after she'd been raped multiple times and forced to have sex with other friends that weren't him. And at one point, my understanding is the brothers had the 2 of them doing stuff, and then when they realized that they were actually a couple, stopped it because that wasn't okay, because they might like that.
Yeah, it's not creepy enough.
It's not creepy enough, right? But so after she's lived through all that, she's shot in the back of the head in a field and left in snow for dead, has to walk a mile in naked, crossing barbed wire fence and all this other stuff. After all that, she's on the stand in their trial for 2 days.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I hope she has excellent counseling and faith-based support because that had to be just horrifying to sit there for 2 days. I can't even imagine. I've never lived through something like that, but to sit there for 2 days and recount every detail after the time, some time has passed and you're trying to process it all. Oh my gosh, a poor girl.
Right. Well, and just hang on to your outrage hat because I'll come back in a minute. So, as evidence of the aggravating circumstances for these capital murder, seeking that death penalty conviction or sentence, seeking the death penalty sentence, they talked about aggravating factors being that the defendants knowingly or purposely killed or created a great risk of death to more than one person. They committed the crimes for the purpose of receiving money or items of monetary value. They committed the crimes to prevent arrest or prosecution. They committed the crimes in especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel manner. So these are all aggravating factors that can be considered when determining whether or not to impose a death sentence. So those were the things that were cited by the state.
Yeah, but we don't even need all your lawyer words for this.
Right.
Holly's story, here's what happened. You don't have to tell anybody. Why is this bad?
Yeah.
Is this really bad? Yes, it's really bad.
So after hearing each brother's case for mitigation, you understand what that,
that's where they say that, they have things about how they were, good church boys growing up, but then they were abused or whatever and had a hard way of it. But they, have been helpful in their community and they take care of their sick uncle and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, typically that is kind of the sort of thing you'd want to hear. But in this case, a little bit different because the Carr brothers, unlike you and me, they didn't have their upbringing, and I'm not making any excuses. This is me giving factual background for what the defense was. So where do I want to start?
Is this they didn't stand a chance defense?
I think that's probably what the lawyers, more or less, you could characterize it like that, but it wasn't in the mommy and daddy didn't hug me enough. So they were both subjected to, I think, dad, I don't remember if they divorced. He was kind of out of the picture pretty quick, but then there was this evidence that dad had sexually assaulted their sister. Then when mom got with new guy, he sexually assaulted them. Mom would beat them with electrical cords. There was a documented history of, I think it was the younger brother, which I can't remember which one it was off the top of my head, but the younger brother had tried to commit suicide at 7 and again at 16, both times drinking antifreeze.
Damn.
I think anytime you have a 7-year-old who tries to commit suicide, that's pretty telling that things are pretty not good. And again, I'm not making any excuses for you people go through hard stuff and they don't go out and kill people or torture people.
Yeah, that's horrible.
There's no excuse for that.
And the people responsible for making these boys' lives that way should be held accountable and dealt with, but that does not give these boys the okay to go do all this nasty shit.
Right, exactly. And so did they have a really crappy childhood? Absolutely. Is it generally, I don't think anybody disagrees that they were abused, and frankly, to see people do this kind of heinous, awful stuff, there's a lot that's not right with somebody like that. But anyway, so that's what was kind of put on as the mitigation defense. I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with the, hey, look, their childhood, their upbringing, what they came from is so awful. We should just expect that this kind of thing would happen. So let's not put them to death. Let's just put them in prison, and that can be that. But after the jury heard all of that, they issued separate verdicts for death for both Reginald and Jonathan. It found unanimously that the state had proved the existence of the 4 aggravating circumstances beyond a reasonable doubt, which is what's required, and that those aggravating circumstances outweighed the mitigating circumstances, justifying 4 separate verdicts of death for each brother for the murders of Jason, Brad, Aaron, and Heather. You got any initial thoughts on just this? So at this point, I'm trying to remember when the trial was. It was in the early 2000s. And so now they're convicted. They have been sentenced to death. And you care to guess what happens next?
Well, they're sentenced. So nobody got off from this. The brothers are.
Oh, they're convicted.
Weren't there 3 brothers?
2.
Oh, okay. Somehow in those names I got something mixed up.
Well, there's a lot of people I'm talking about here. But yeah, there's 2 brothers, Reginald, Jonathan. They have been completely convicted on the only charges that there was an acquittal on. One of the brothers was acquitted on a couple of counts that were related to Andrew's carjacking. they found that the evidence wasn't sufficient enough to prove that he was involved because, and the thing was, if you think about it, you think back to and I know I kind of went through those facts quickly. When that carjacking happened, essentially it was the one brother did the gun to the head, get the money from the ATM, all the stuff, while the other one was in another car, sort of like waiting, and he went back. So I just think there wasn't any, apparently the jury wasn't satisfied that they had proven beyond a reasonable doubt that the other brother did any of those crimes.
Yeah, well, I mean, strangely enough, that was the least serious thing these dirtbags did. So we're to a point where, on top of everything else, they each have sentenced to death ×4.
That's exactly right.
So are they dead yet?
See, I was hoping that you would ask that. I was really hoping that you would ask that. So this is in the early 2000s that we see that they are convicted. I want to say it was like the end of 2002. I'm pretty sure it was like fall, winter 2002. So roughly 2 years after the incident happened, which for a capital case with that kind of, I mean, talking 100 counts and all that, I think that's actually not a bad turnaround. It's 2024. They're still alive.
What?
Yeah. Well, I mean, what happens after the convictions? I thought you would... This is
lawyers. Lawyers is what happens.
Appeals were filed, and the case made its way to the Kansas Supreme Court. And the Kansas Supreme Court threw out the death penalty convictions.
Why? Exactly why? Because why?
So, in an opinion that is... Here, I'm just going to pull it up and real quick, like take a peek at this real quick. So this is the Kansas Supreme Court's opinion. Mm-hmm. Okay, just watch. And this is in 2014, by the way. So, 12 years after the convictions we get here. But, like, just look at how long this is. I mean, it is, like, so incredibly lengthy. It's ridiculous. Essentially, without getting too into the weeds of the legal minutia of what they do here, they say that the proceedings below violated the brothers' Eighth Amendment rights, having to do with the fact that their sentencing phase with the jury was this joint thing, and that essentially the one brother, the younger brother, argued that the older brother had so much influence and control over him that he just did what he wanted him to do, and that, you know, it was, and that was his defense, but that they couldn't they couldn't do it the way that they should have been able to do it because they were jointly, the hearing was joint, that whole proceeding, that part was jointly done instead of individually done. And the Kansas Supreme Court was all about it. There is a clip of the victims' families talking immediately after the Kansas Supreme Court issued this decision, and they basically, you know, let you know what they think about it, which I can't disagree with. Because here we are, it's 2014. This is 12 years after the convictions, and now the death penalty is gone. Now, they didn't throw out the convictions on, like, that they did it. It was the death penalty part of it that they threw out.
So what do? Do they commute the sentence to life, or what?
Well, appeals aren't over yet because the state wasn't having it. So what did the state do? They appealed it up to the United States Supreme Court. And the United States Supreme Court, in an 8-1 decision, said, no, Kansas Supreme Court, you're wrong. You suck. Absolutely not. And reinstated the death penalty convictions for the brothers.
Aha. And when did that happen?
That happened in 2016.
Why are they still alive?
Great question, but I can tell you that in April of 2024, there was a motion for resentencing that was filed on behalf of the brothers' attorneys with the trial court, saying all this, you know, lawyer stuff, essentially, without getting into the nitty-gritty again. And the court denied it in April, saying there's no reason for me to do that. Like,
we've already been to the Supreme Court. What do you got that's new?
And I'll tell you, I'm summarizing. There was a lot of back and forth during these appeals. I'm kind of hitting the high levels. As you can imagine, the amount of time that this has taken, it's been through all the courts and all the lands. But I will say that after the court issued its decision in April of 2024, saying that the judge said, I don't know that I can do anything about that sentence until somebody vacates it, meaning the death sentence. He also, or the article that I found about this, pointed out that Kansas has 9 men on death row, but that the state hasn't executed anybody since they hanged a duo named James Latham and George York on the same day in 1965. Kansas death row, I guess, is just a place you go to hang out. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess it's a life sentence. I don't know. Those guys, I don't know. Death is too good for them in one way, but at the same time, they certainly don't deserve to be sucking up oxygen on this planet and costing the taxpayers of Kansas any money.
Yeah, and so what the state said, the attorney for the state, the prosecutor said, what the defense wants to do is reopen this whole sentencing hearing, which isn't necessary. And ultimately, the court agreed. And of course, what I was going to say earlier is at the end of this, the attorneys for the Carr brothers said that they plan to appeal the court's decision in April of 2024 denying the motion to resentence.
They've already been to the Supreme Court.
So the issue,
but I guess it's different grounds that they're appealing on.
So the issue here is
the Supreme Court didn't hear
through all, and I'm sorry, I didn't make this clear. So through all of this appellate nonsense that has went on for the better part of 2 decades, some of the charges were thrown out, not all, and not the most relevant ones. What the defense attorneys were arguing at this hearing was more or less that, well, now that some of these have been thrown out, they should be resentenced because when the court sentenced them originally, they had all of these counts, and now there's like 3 less counts or 10 less counts or whatever.
Out of 100.
Right. And so the whole point is like, really, come on. Like, they take a couple counts off, it doesn't really change the outcome here. It's not like it makes them, not like they got the murder counts all got vacated,
Right.
Like the most serious ones are still intact.
Right. And I'm telling you, after Holly describing what happened, it's going to be a death sentence. Everything else is icing on the cake. I mean, it's death times 4 each.
Right.
How do you think you're going to... Good Lord.
And just some extra things to know about the case. So during the trial, there was one point where one of the brothers was actually removed during the trial because of snickering and blowing kisses and doing things like that. So to me, these guys, this isn't like they just went on a bender. I mean, I've heard...
This is who they are.
Right. It's just pure evil. And I have some pictures up of the victims. You can see this is... I don't have a picture of Holly. She's managed to maintain her privacy, which she should, and nobody should try to bother that. But I mean, these just look like average, everyday, folks. And it's such a shame that you had these young people who had so much ahead of them. Anytime anybody is tragically killed, it's just awful. But this case in particular is it is evil to the core.
Yeah.
Absolutely evil.
So y'all like to use that heinous word a lot, but this is heinous.
Yeah. You're right. It can get diluted, but I think this is a classic example of heinous behavior. So that is a general overview of the Wichita Massacre from the year 2000, where the Carr brothers, some other brothers in crime who are just disgusting. I think we made it through this whole episode, and I don't think you used your catchphrase.
I think I did.
Oh, did you?
I'm pretty sure I did.
Oh, okay.
They are both there, each individually and together, a bag of shit. Hey, thanks for hanging out with us on the Brothers in Crime podcast. Feedback and suggestions are always welcome. For links and resources related to this episode, please see the show notes or visit us at brothersincrimepodcast.com. We hope you'll save, subscribe, or bookmark us on your favorite podcast site and join us for the next episode.